Hey guys, Charles Damiano here from the Bruce Lee Collection for another exciting episode, and today I'm honored to be with Sifu Rudy Lams. Thank you for inviting me into your home here today.
Thank you, my friend.
I really appreciate this interview, man.
Thank you.
I'm taking this opportunity. I'm in Miami, Florida. I'm down here on a work retreat, and I figured I'd kill two birds with one stone and visit my buddy here, Sifu Rudy Lams, who I know many years, right? Probably since the 90s.
90s, maybe
early 80s, right?
Yeah.
Because Rudy used to order a lot of memorabilia on Bruce Lee for me back in the day from the catalogs, because I put together 6 or 7 catalogs back in the late 80s, early 90s, and Rudy was one of the first customers, and he wanted those catalogs because I know you're a big Bruce Lee collector, besides being a very big JKD practitioner. So we're going to get into Rudy's background, talk about his JKD training. He's been studying probably well over 40, maybe 50 years now?
I've been training for 54 years,
Wow.
but in Jeet Kune Do, about 40 something years.
Wow, amazing. And he's also a huge Bruce Lee collector. When I came to his house today, the first 45 minutes we just spent going in room to room looking at all his collectibles, and I told him we finally better start recording, otherwise we could spend a week here. He has so much stuff, and I hope to give you guys a little room tour later so you can see some of these Bruce Lee collectibles firsthand. But first and foremost, let's get to know Rudy a little bit. So I want to just find out a little bit, and I know the audience will probably like to know a little bit about your background, like how you first got started in martial arts. Like, when did it start for you? How far back does that go? And what was the first thing
Don't
you
remember
studied?
the year, but I was 7 years old.
Oh, okay.
I went to my cousin's house with my family on a Sunday. My cousin was teaching karate.
Okay.
USA Goju Karate. And I asked him, he had a poster on Bruce Lee, and I said, "Who's that?" And he said, "Oh, it's Bruce Lee. It's one of my favorite posters. It's an Enter the Dragon poster." And at the end of the class, before I left, he gave it to me. And that started everything from me collecting on Bruce Lee and wanting to take judo as my first thing that I took as martial arts after school.
At 7 years old.
Yeah.
So you were inspired simply from the poster alone.
The poster is what got me started.
So you didn't see any movies yet? What year was that about when you saw that? So that was so you were
I was
7?
born in 63, 70.
Oh, so 70. So
Yeah,
Bruce
yeah.
didn't even come out with the films yet.
Yeah.
So what poster was it?
It was the Enter the Dragon at the end when he's fighting the battlefield with Han.
Oh, with that one, when he's out with his arm like that.
this.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. Well,
That his tippy toes. That's one of my favorite ones.
that poster did it for everyone, man.
Yeah.
So you saw that poster and that kind of did it for you.
That did it for me, right?
And then, so you started first with judo?
I started with judo after school.
Okay, at 7 years old.
7 and a half, around there, more or less, yeah.
Well, and then when were you first introduced to Bruce on screen? Like, what was the first movie you seen, and what was that experience like? Do you remember that?
Well, I was introduced to Bruce on screen. I'm not sure if it was the Green Hornet
Okay.
that came out, but I remember on the big screen, it was Return of the Dragon.
Oh, it was Return of the Dragon.
I used to go with my father to a theater down here called Circle Theater.
Okay.
And we used to go, we would go so many times to go see it and over and over that the manager gave me free posters and everything, and I loved it.
So you saw...
What could be more exciting than Bruce Lee in Enter the Dragon? Bruce Lee in Return of the Dragon. Yes, Bruce Lee is back, blazing his way from Hong Kong to hell and...
So you saw that probably then in 74, because that's when it hit the States, and that's when I saw it. And I'm a little older than you. I'm 65 now. So I saw it when it came out in 74 for the first time.
Yeah.
But prior to that, I saw Fist of Fury, Chinese Connection, and Enter the Dragon prior to seeing Return of the Dragon. And I was blown away when I saw him, with the battle with Chuck Norris. So you saw that. And then did you circle back and then see the other films?
Then I started to watch, but I can't tell you, to be honest with you, which was first.
I got you.
But I went to see, obviously, then Fist of Fury, Chinese Connection, and then Enter the Dragon.
And then, so what was your favorite film? Do you have a favorite? I know it's hard to pick one. I always ask people, and it's
really
like
hard for me to pick. It's between Chinese Connection. It's hard.
It's hard.
And Chinese Connection, Enter the Dragon, and
I know they're all so good.
Return of the Dragon. I love Return of the Dragon.
I did too.
That was when he was in the best shape.
Yeah, I always tell people now that Enter the Dragon is my favorite movie. I just love the whole story behind it.
Oh, yeah.
He looked the best in that. I mean, he was just great. But I also like Chinese Connection, had a great storyline, and the fury he exemplified in that film was crazy. And then obviously Return of the Dragon is great too, because the battle with Chuck and Bob Wall, and man, the fight scenes in there were just crazy.
Yeah.
And you really could see his JKD in Return of the Dragon. I think
that was all right there.
That was all right there.
The beauty would have been when Game of Death, because Game of Death was supposed to be all about Jeet Kune Do.
I know.
All of it about Jeet Kune Do.
That's where he was going to showcase
everything,
right?
The transition.
Adapting to each style, that would have been beautiful, man, to see that. So so besides being a collector and Bruce Lee fan, you have a really vast JKD journey. Your Jeet Kune Do journey is like incredible, because you met a lot of the first generation students. You met all the Lee family, Linda Lee, Shannon Lee. You were there, firsthand with his first generation students. So when did you hit JKD? I know you started with judo, and then when did you finally say, "Hey, I want to start studying Jeet Kune Do"?
I think it was.
And who was your first instructor?
I don't remember the year, but I trained with Bustillo for 33 years.
Oh wow, 33 years
before he passed away.
Okay,
but he was my first instructor.
Yeah, everyone talks so highly of Bustillo, and I only met him once at one of the Bruce Lee and Brandon Lee, memorial banquets that Linda Lee used to run in California. I met him one time. He did a seminar. I was very impressed with him just from his speaking and demonstrating, but. Everyone always says if you want to learn how to fight, go to Bustillo. Why did they say that with him?
Well, Ted Wong was one of them that used to tell me, because I was training with Bustillo, and I'll tell you later a story of how I met Ted Wong and everything. But I was training with Bustillo, and I wanted to train with Inosanto.
Okay.
But he had a representative down here, so I couldn't. Eventually, I went and I started training with Inosanto.
Yeah.
While I was training with Bustillo.
Okay.
When I stayed up there, we trained with Bustillo, Ted Wong, Hartzell, and Inosanto. So I was constantly training, just constantly training the whole time. But Ted Wong was the first one that told me, stay with Bustillo. Bustillo can really put it into a fight. Bustillo was a boxer, and he could have been a professional boxer.
Wow, he was that good.
That's how good he was.
Yeah.
Ask the people that really knew him, he could have been a professional boxer.
Yeah.
Bruce Lee was a perfectionist, and he treated everybody as an individual, like the big heavy people. He would work on things that would be to his benefit. For me, because I had my boxing background, he worked on my hand speed. I lacked the flexibility. He worked on my flexibility.
He was nobody to mess around with.
Yeah.
He was straight to the point. I used to sometimes introduce him as my teacher. I studied with Bruce Lee. He didn't even want that to be recognized.
Really?
He was very humble in that part. But his training was very, very intense.
And what was he teaching at that time? Was he calling it Jun Fan Gung Fu? Was he calling it Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do?
No, I don't recall he ever called it Jun Fan Gung Fu.
Okay.
It was just Jeet Kune Do.
Just Jeet Kune Do.
Jeet Kune Do, that's it.
And that's...
He taught the Jeet Kune Do, the Filipino Kali system.
Okay.
And then we always had instructors coming in, world champions from Muay Thai, from Thailand, to do Muay Thai training. And we always used to go to the Machado gym to train with Machados. And then that's where eventually I met and I got my training with Yuri Nakamura and Shu from Inosanto and Bustillo, because they both were training with him.
Oh, I got you. So where did Bustillo first start teaching you when you studied with him? How did he break down his class? Like, what was he big with in teaching?
His class was very, very repetitive.
Okay.
In the sense that it wasn't just jump from one thing to another. Mm-hmm. So the core of it was boxing.
Okay.
Pure boxing. That was the core.
Okay.
And then from there we went into some trapping, footwork, and then some kicks. He wasn't too much into kicks.
Okay.
Unless they were low kicks. Mm-hmm. But his stuff was pure boxing.
And did he get a lot of this from his training with Bruce when he trained?
He got it with training with Bruce. If you're familiar, Bruce trained everybody differently.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Bustillo told me was he never had flexibility. I don't recall why he didn't have it. Maybe he didn't practice it, but he didn't have that much flexibility. Mm-hmm. So since Bustillo liked a lot of boxing and Bruce liked a lot of boxing, Bruce started adapting him more into the boxing part of it with the trapping. Mm-hmm. And that's where he stuck with. That was his core.
Oh, okay.
So Bruce taught him just that, the boxing and all that. So.
Where was he teaching at the time? Was it as part of the Inosanto Academy at the time? Would he have his own school?
Well, his school is IMB.
IMB.
Which is now International Martial Arts and Boxing.
Okay.
But we had a conversation. I told you where IMB came from. IMB, Bustillo and Inosanto. Inosanto used to teach in his backyard when Bruce told him to close all the schools. Inosanto had asked him,
okay,
you know, do you mind if I continue teaching in our backyard? And Bruce said, that's fine. So he would teach in the backyard. They had a student, I believe his name was Chuck Martinez.
Okay.
I know the last name is Martinez, but I'm not sure if the first name was Chuck. But anyway, he was a wealthy man, and he was asking Bustillo and Inosanto, how come you guys don't open up a school? So back then, Inosanto was a school teacher, and Bustillo worked for Pan Am. So eventually, he put in the money, and he became like the silent partner, the middleman.
Ah, okay.
So it was Inosanto, Martinez, and Bustillo.
Oh, so that's what IMB
And that's
stood
what
for.
IMB stood for originally.
Wow, I never knew that.
And then eventually, Inosanto, you know, he moved on his own way, and he opened up Inosanto Academy.
Right.
Bustillo stayed with the school.
Oh.
But he wanted to keep the name IMB, so he named it International Martial Arts and Boxing.
Oh, wow,
And I don't know if you're
interesting.
familiar, when they opened up the school, they had a waiting list of 6 months for people to go into the school to train.
Wow.
That's how
Popular it was.
Yeah, because they're the first ones that get credit for introducing the Filipino Kali.
Yep.
They always trained in Jeet Kune Do. They constantly trained in it, taught it, and
Yeah.
they were the core of it. If
Yeah.
you really want to go to it.
Yeah.
They were the core.
Yeah, and that was the 80s, right? Was that in the 80s or late
That
70s?
was, no.
Or-
That was late 70s.
Late 70s.
Yeah.
Wow, and
Late
you started studying with Richard Bustillo then back then in the late
I started with him in the 80s.
in the 80s.
Yeah, in the 80s.
At his academy, the IMB
At
Academy?
the IMB.
Wow. And how long did you stay with him?
Well, still 33 years.
33 years, up until the point where he passed away.
So he passed away, correct.
Wow, amazing.
And not like stay with him forever.
Yeah.
Even still gone, he's still my mentor. I
Yeah.
remember so many things he still tells me. It's, you know.
Now, was he certifying people at the time? Did you get certified through?
He was certifying people, but like him and Inosanto, unfortunately, my opinion, today everybody gets certified like this.
Yeah.
You know, you can either get somebody calls you or contacts you because they've done it with me.
Yeah.
You know, they'll give you money for it, and I say no. Or people just certify anybody easily. Through Inosanto or Bustillo to get certified, just to become an associate instructor,
Yeah.
you got to train for 10 years.
Wow.
10 years first.
Yeah.
And then throughout the years, then you become an associate, then you become a full instructor, and so on and so on and so on. So you got to put the time
Yeah.
into it.
They really make you earn it, right?
Yeah.
If they're going to rank you in that or
Yeah.
just claim that you're certified, they want you to earn it.
Yeah.
Earn that.
And that's when I
certification.
believe back then JKD was what JKD was.
Yeah.
It's gotten watered down,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
For those who don't know what JKD is or never heard of Jeet Kune Do, I mean, most people know now, but when people say, so what is Jeet Kune Do? How do you explain that to people? Because, you know, there's so many different explanations of what, and it's hard to explain, right? So how do you simplify it? How do you explain that to people?
well,
like, what would you say?
You know, Jeet Kune Do, Inosanto I think said it best, and people don't give credit to Inosanto.
What did he say?
People say, oh, I do karate, I do, they say, shoot wrestling, kempo, jiu-jitsu, and I call that Jeet Kune Do. And Inosanto's correct. That is Jeet Kune Do. That is your Jeet Kune Do. But that's not Bruce's Jeet Kune Do. Bruce's Jeet Kune Do had a foundation. Like everything, you have to have a foundation, like a home.
Yeah.
If you don't have a good foundation, the home will crumble.
Right.
eventually. So you have to have the basics, which is your footwork, your boxing, and some trapping. And then from there, you got to start cutting the essentials. Now, it doesn't mean you add more or you take away, but it means you sharpen your skills. That's why Bruce always said, I'm not afraid of a man that practices 10,000 kicks, but I'm afraid of a man that practices one kick 10,000
times. Yeah.
So you sharpen your tools.
Yeah.
Now, today, most people think, oh, a lead jab and a kick and some trapping will work. It's not going to work in a real fight, especially now when you have the UFC out there, and these guys can take you down. It'll take them a while to take you down, which I agree. And UFC is a sport,
right?
You know, where you can't gouge the eyes, go to the throat, things like that. But you gotta be also prepared to train on the ground if they take you to the ground.
Yeah.
Like most people say, well, 75% of the fights are on the ground. Absolutely, but 100% they start standing up.
Standing up, right.
So if you're taken to the ground, you want to get up quick.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
if I'm a great jiu-jitsu fighter and I take you to the ground and your wife is coming over, she's going to hit me or kick me with the purse, whatever, and I'm going to have to let go.
Yep.
You're going to get up, or your buddy's going to come and get me.
Yeah.
So it has its purpose, but not all the time. So you have to find out what it is, like what system you're training in and what it's essential for. It could be good for you.
Yeah.
You know, but it may not be good for everybody.
Yeah. So the core elements, though, that people say that Bruce first started training in was what? Wing Chun, right? Boxing, and then he got footwork out of fencing from his brother, right? At the time. So that was kind of somewhat of the foundation, right?
Correct.
But JKD evolved, right? It was continually evolving, right? Is that why he closed down the schools eventually?
Well, from what I've been told, yes, JKD was evolving, but I don't know if you're familiar. Like JKD originally had, when Bruce started it, you know, it was called Jin Fan Kung Fu. It had katas, forms, and Bruce took it out.
Wow.
He was constantly changing it every month.
Yeah.
Every month, something was taken off. And he would tell Inosanto, no, we're no longer doing this, we're no longer doing that. And he was experimenting.
Yeah.
So eventually it started building up more and more. Now, one of the things that, like Bruce, he said it, he regretted it calling it Jeet Kune Do.
Right.
But he called it Jeet Kune Do because when he was being interviewed, you know, he had to call it something because nobody knew what it was. So he called it. But, you know, I'm amazed because he's so advanced, because he said, I don't want people fussing over the name.
Yeah.
And look how many years he's been dead, and people are still fussing
Over the name, I
Whether
know.
it's original Jeet Kune Do, traditional Jeet Kune Do concepts, all this stuff. You know, people are still fighting over it.
I know.
So I'm amazed. That's why Inosanto really has stayed out of it. People don't give him credit. But there was a reason that Bruce left Inosanto in charge to teach. Bruce would come in and teach a couple lessons, but he was back out filming. Doing something else.
Yeah.
And why did Bruce have his windows painted and no signs?
Yeah, they did that at the California, San Francisco school.
He never
Right? They
advertised.
blacked out the windows, I heard.
And the only way you can go to his school was if I brought you to his school.
It was all through referrals.
That's all it was.
Yeah.
And he only accepted black belts. The only person he took that was not a black belt was Ted Wong.
Ted Wong.
And that's because him and Ted Wong got along great.
Yep.
He spoke Cantonese, this and that. But all he accepted was black belts.
Wow.
Why? Because he wanted to make himself better. So he would use them to train to make himself better.
Yeah.
And that's why Bruce was who he was.
Yeah.
You know?
So it really wasn't that he wanted to open up all these schools and really make teaching his profession. He was kind of using the people that he was training with to get better himself, right? He was really experimenting on himself constantly, right?
His thing was eventually to teach kind of Jeet Kune Do in a certain way, but in a large majority on the films, throughout the films.
Right.
That's what I was told.
Yeah.
That was his idea.
To kind of get the beauty of JKD out through the films, right? So that the mass could understand what Jeet Kune Do was all about,
Because
right?
if you know how to use it, apply it. Let me rephrase that. You can apply it on every day in life. Because it's like what I always say in my articles. At the end, I always say, trying to be a better version of yourself.
Right.
So it's basically finding the cause of, like Bruce said, I looked in the mirror, I found the cause of my ignorance. What is that?
Lee, I want you to teach me what you did the other night.
I already told Miss Bell I can't.
I'm willing to empty my cup in order to taste your tea.
Your open-mindedness is cool, but it doesn't change anything. I don't believe in system, Mr. Longstreet, nor in method. Now, without system, without method, what's to teach?
But you had to learn. You weren't born knowing how to take apart three men in a matter of seconds.
True, but I found the cause of my ignorance.
Well, help me find mine.
That's a great line.
You look in the mirror and you find out really what you really got to work on.
Oh, yeah.
Look at your reflection. You see what you really got to work on. And that's what I tell my students all the time.
That's great.
When you come in here, you know, you leave your ego outside. You come in here. Here's where you want to make the mistakes because in the street you're not. Here's where you experiment and see what works for you.
Yeah.
And that you can apply that every day in life on every aspect.
Yeah.
I mean, you should know that as a fitness trainer.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's so funny. You know, I talk to people a lot through the comments on my channel, and you know, they agree with you. And a lot of them say, you know, Jeet Kune Do is more than just martial art and fighting. It's things you could apply to your life. It's a way of living almost,
way of
right?
life.
It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how deep he got with it.
Yeah.
That it was. It would have been really great seeing him display that in Game of Death, man. Unfortunately, we never got a chance to see him go up the pagoda on those 5 levels. Fighting his way up. So who was the second instructor you studied with then?
The
So
second
you went
instructor
from
was Inosanto.
Oh, Inosanto became your next instructor at the time.
Inosanto.
Wow.
Sorry.
Rudy has a little dog here. Is a girl?
It's a girl.
Can I pick her up?
Yeah, of course.
What's her name?
Fluffy.
This is Fluffy, everyone. She wants to get in the film. She's a big ham. You're a star now, you. Fluffy. So you did that in Inosanto next.
Yeah.
Okay, and then was that at his academy at the time?
It was at his academy, yeah.
The one that he still has? It wasn't always in Marina del Rey.
He was in Marina del... No, that was the Machados. He was by the airport.
By the airport, okay, yeah.
Exactly.
But now I think he has it in Marina del Rey, I think, his academy, right? I think it's still there now, yeah.
Yeah,
I think it is. Yeah.
Marina del Rey.
In LA. So we were talking about Inosanto. So he was your second instructor. And then you studied with him, for about 10 years?
10 years.
And how was what he was teaching you different from what Richard Bustillo was teaching you? Was it different agenda, different...
Inosanto was a lot of information.
Yeah.
It was like a lot of stuff like this.
Wow.
Where Bustillo was, okay, we punch, repetitive,
Yeah.
till you got really proficient with it.
At that one point.
Inosanto was getting a lot of information.
Got ya.
And always having great stories.
Yeah.
You know, to me, Inosanto is a walking encyclopedia.
Yeah.
For
A lot of
martial
people say
arts.
that, yeah.
There's no doubt about it. His contribution is amazing.
It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, people love Dan Inosanto.
Yeah, I love all my teachers. I think Bustillo's the strongest one because the connection I have with him. Inosanto because his passion. Ted Wong because he spent a lot of times in my home and we'd stay up till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning talking.
Wow, that's fantastic.
And Ted Wong a couple times used to cry when he talked about Bruce. He really loved Bruce.
He loved Bruce, right? Yeah.
He really, I mean, I'm not saying the other instructors didn't.
Yeah.
But he really loved Bruce.
Yeah. Was there any stories Ted told you about Bruce that you can share? Or do you remember these?
Off the top of my head right now, I don't remember.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to tell you one story. He did tell me a story. I don't know if it's true or not, but Bustillo laughs, so I'm assuming it is true.
Yeah.
He said one day him and Bustillo went to have Chinese, and they were eating, and there was a guy talking in Cantonese about Bruce Lee. And he knew that either they both studied with Bruce or Ted Wong, but he was talking crap about
Bruce Lee.
And Bustillo asked him, what is he saying? And Ted Wong's just like, no, don't worry about it. Because Bustillo, like I said, doesn't mess around.
Yeah, he's a fighter.
He is a fighter.
Yeah.
He doesn't back down to anything.
Yeah.
Bustillo went up to approach the guy after Ted Wong told him. They went outside to have a fight. Ted Wong says that Bustillo started warming up. When the guy saw Bustillo warming up, the guy left. When Bustillo turned around, the guy was not there. So that's one of my favorite stories.
That's funny.
You know?
So Bustillo called him out.
Yeah.
And then he started warming up.
Bustillo always called everybody out.
Yeah.
He didn't mess around.
And the guy split. He knew Bustillo knew what he was talking about, I guess.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a funny story.
That was a good story for me.
Wow, so how were you introduced to Ted then? Because, I mean, these were all pieces of the puzzle. I mean, you as a JKD instructor was trying to find, I guess, putting all the pieces of the puzzle together with Bruce, as they say. How'd you meet Ted?
Ted Wong was interesting. Ted Wong was at Bustillo school. And it was in the evening. We had finished training. And I see Ted Wong coming in. And I'm freaking out.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's Ted Wong. And he started talking to some people. And he was talking to Bustillo. And then Bustillo said, I got somebody to meet that he knows a lot about Bruce Lee. Probably more than what we do. Because he knew I was a big collector. He called me over. I was nervous.
Yeah.
Like literally. And he introduced himself. Very humble, very nice guy. We started talking. And from there we clicked. We automatically clicked. Immediately I asked him for his number. I wanted to see if I could train with him. The first thing he did tell me is you got to talk to Bustillo. So of course I asked Bustillo. He said, yeah, of course. Bustillo's all about training.
Yeah.
That's all it was.
Wow.
So I always trained religiously at Bustillo.
Yeah.
But then on my free times, I would go train with
Ted.
Inosanto, and then Ted or Larry Hartzell.
So you, wow.
So I was constantly training with them. And then it happened to be that through my conversation one day at Ted Wong's house, I found out that his wife were probably related as cousins because her last name is the same as mine. And she's from Canton, so am I.
Oh, wow.
My grandfather. So we really clicked.
And this was Ted's wife?
Yeah, Ted.
Wow.
Ted's wife. So we really clicked there.
Nice.
We maintained
what a coincidence that was, right?
Well, I don't believe in coincidence.
Yeah.
Things happen for a reason.
Wow, man, look at that.
Yeah. Even though my last name didn't have an S at the end. It's Lam, L-E-M.
Oh, okay.
My grandfather added the S when he came to the United States.
Oh, wow,
So,
okay.
my grandfather's from Canton, China.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So you're half from
Cuban Chinese.
Wow, interesting, man.
Yeah, I'll show
And
you the pictures after.
When you used to write to me, were you using Lam, Rudy Lam at the time?
No, I
it
found
was
out
always
about my
Lams,
last
right?
name when my grandfather passed away.
Oh, okay.
Something I asked my father, and he told me, oh, no, your grandfather added the S at the end.
Ah, interesting. Wow. Interesting. So then you did the whole scene with Richard Bustillo, Inosanto, Ted Wong, and then you mentioned Larry Hartzell as well?
I hadn't trained with Larry. Well, I trained with Larry on and off.
Yeah.
Because Larry always hung out at Inosanto's school.
Okay.
So that's where I met Larry.
Got ya.
And I trained with him, not as rigorously as I did with Inosanto or
Yeah.
Bustillo or Ted Wong. But then eventually I started training more with him because his grappling was amazing.
Yeah.
He had good collie, but he was also another brawler. He was Mr. T's bodyguard.
Oh, was he? I didn't know that. Oh,
He was
interesting.
Mr. T's bodyguard.
Interesting.
Larry was a tough guy.
Yeah, he's another tough guy, I know.
Very
Yeah,
tough guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was he part of Bruce's backyard students? Was he one of them? Yeah, he was one of them in there with Ted.
You
And,
see the pictures. He's with the photo with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar,
Yeah.
Inosanto, and all that stuff.
yeah, he's in there with them, right?
Yeah.
Wow, interesting. So, I give you a lot of credit because you made this whole Jeet Kune Do, journey your profession also, right? And you decided to make it your life. I mean, how long have you been teaching now, Jeet Kune Do?
Teaching, I want to say, like 30 years.
Oh, so you've been teaching.
Jeet Kune Do 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And where do you do most of the teaching now when you have students that train with you? Do you teach them out of your home? Do you have a school?
Well, I have a studio, as you see, we're stepping in it right now.
Which I love.
I have a studio. It's a mess right now because
You're in the process of
Stay tuned for part 2 for more on Sifu Rudy Lams' Jeet Kune Do and Bruce Lee journey. His meeting with Bruce Lee's mother and wife, Linda Lee. His being featured in numerous martial arts magazines around the world. And why he has decided to sell his entire Bruce Lee collection. And much, much more coming soon.